Hello. So this time I thought of talking about the Alzheimer's disease and the genetics. As you know, recently we have been talking about genetics in every possible disease. Even when you talk about the cancers, we talk about the gene mutation in the tumor cells, and that determines whether one will respond to a particular immunotherapy or not. So there are two kinds of mutation, one which occurs in regular cells of the body, like the example would be breast cancer gene, which is present in every cell in the body. Contrast to that, there are some gene mutations which occur in the cancer cells. And the two are different. So one should not confuse the gene mutation that occurs in, say, lung cancer or bladder cancer or esophageal cancer that will determine whether that tumor is likely to respond to immunotherapy or not. So I'm talking about Alzheimer's disease today, and I'm talking about the gene mutation. Most of us know about Alzheimer's disease as a dementia. However, there are two kinds of Alzheimer's, or at least broadly speaking, there are two kinds. One is which occurs in early age or early age onset, between say 30 and 60, other one which occurs after 60. The two have different genetic predisposition. Please also note that when we talk about Alzheimer's and genes, the genes that I'm talking about are risk factor genes, which means that one who has the mutation has a higher than normal chance of getting the disease. It does not mean 100%. So just because one has a risk gene mutation, he has some chance of getting that disease, in this particular case the Alzheimer's disease, but it is by no means 100%. The deterministic genes, which means these gene mutations, when it occurs, there is a guarantee that the disease is going to occur. We do not have that kind of gene mutation, at least we don't know enough. There are some researches going on to find out if there is anything which is like a deterministic gene. So what I'm talking about it is just a risk factor increasing genes. So a lot of people have known that it is the amyloid or tau protein that is not cleared, etc. So one of the genes that I'm talking about is in the early onset Alzheimer's, the one which occurs in 30 to 60 age group, 30 years to 60 age group, is called PSEN1 and PSEN2. Don't bother knowing about the long form of this. The one gene mutation occurs on chromosome 14. The PSEN gene 2 mutation occurs on chromosome 1. Now, as you can expect, the function of this particular thing is to clear the amyloid. Basic understanding is that when you have these gene mutations and you get the two pairs, you have a high risk of getting the disease. The usual Alzheimer's disease, the commoner one, which is probably 90%, which occurs, or maybe 95%, which occurs in age group after 60. Some people feel that the early onset Alzheimer's is only 1 or 2%. I don't know the exact data on that, but late onset seems to be more common. And the one that occurs, the gene that they have known is called APOE. APOE. There are a number of them, gene mutation. Now, just to understand what is gene and a gene mutation, quick sermon. There is a cell, there is a nucleus, which is like a controlling entity, the CPU of the cell. That has chromosomes. These are 23 pairs in a human beings. The chromosomes One of them is called sex chromosome because the two chromosomes, even though they are paired, they are not always identical. So if one is X and the other one is Y, the determinant sex is male. If both are X and X, then it is a female, biological female. We're not getting into the discussion about non-biological males and females here. So basically, the rest 22 pairs are identical. In these identical pairs of chromosomes, there are pieces of proteins. Those are called genes. There are billions of genes. However, the protein-producing genes are about 25 to 30,000. So you get one pair from the father, and you get one from the father, one from the mother, making it a pair. So half of my genes come from my father, half of genes come from my mother. And that's how the full pair is formed. In the sperm, there are half split genes. In the ovum or the female egg, again, there are half of them. When they come together, you get a full pair, half of which comes from father, half of which comes from mother. So simple way to understand it is that one controls the other. So if you happen to get a one bad gene, then your risk increases, but not as high as if you had two pairs of genes which are bad. That means you got a bad one from father and bad one from the mother. So the adult onset or the advanced onset Alzheimer's disease after 60s, one of the important gene mutation is called APOE. Now APOE, and it says small e again, APOE and then small e4, which is the notorious one to increase the risk of Alzheimer's in late onset. So approximately 25% of the patients who have genetic mutation on APOE E4 have developed Alzheimer's disease. If you have a EPOE3, then it is neutral. So if you get both the gene mutation of EPOE4, then that happens in about 1 to 3% of the population. And the risk of getting Alzheimer's is increased 7 to 10 times higher. So again, it's very common sense. If one gene mutation occurs, you have a risk. If both occurs, you have a higher risk. This fortunately is not seen that commonly in the general population. So this is a risk gene, not a deterministic gene. And this occurs in certain population, and they are saying that 45% to 60% of adult or late onset Alzheimer has this particular gene mutation. However, the risk of developing Alzheimer's is only 25% with one gene mutation. With two gene mutation, it is much higher. So certainly there is a lot of research going on right now in trying to find out if there is any deterministic gene. The deterministic gene, as I mentioned before, is that you have it, you got it. While the risk factor genes, if you have it, you have a higher risk. Just to give you another quick example to understand it, there is a genetic mutation called alpha-1 antitrypsin. This is an enzyme, lack of which can lead to emphysema in smokers. So there is an environmental factor, smoking, and there is a genetic risk, which is increased. If you are not a smoker and you have a genetic mutation of alpha-1 antitrypsin, you are not likely to get emphysema unless you get exposed to something which is toxic to your lungs. So similar to that, there must be some environmental factor which also lead to Alzheimer's disease in this risk mutated genes. Remember, APOE4 is the risk increasing gene, in Alzheimer's disease. If somebody has it positive and both are there, then the risk is much higher. There's a lot of research going on. I would like to do one more video on this in the future. Thank you for watching. If you like it, please subscribe and share it with your friends. Have a nice day.